So, back into the commission meeting, I'd like to recognize Chairman Sanders for the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Chairman Cook. We are going to go back into committee from yesterday, where we took a recess, and we have 4 motions that the committee needs to work with or to approve or discuss. First is the expansion to the current 2018-19 wildlife budget in the amount of $12,135,300, which includes the amendment that was passed yesterday. So I will. Are we good?
So hang on just a second.
Yesterday you had the budget before you and you voted on the expansion, and that was
Correct.
okay. So that's as far.
That's as far as we went.
Okay.
We're just taking the committee back. Table, yes, they were taking it back that session. Is that good?
That's fine. That's fine. I just want to make sure that you have not voted on the budget per se.
That's correct.
Very good.
Yes. The only thing we voted on yesterday was Commissioner expansion.
That was approved, so we have it as amended at this point, still in committee.
Still in committee, open for discussion.
Yes.
Very good.
Okay, so I will take a motion for the expansion of $12,135,300.
So moved.
Second. All right, any discussions from the committee? Any discussions from the public? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Stay with me. All right. Second one is the expansion to the 2018-19 boating budget in the amount of $650,000. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Any discussions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner.
I'd like to offer up an amendment.
Okay.
Expansion. If any of you got your books, it'd be the first line item under boating, be fuel tax projects, 6906, page number 7. I make a motion to change that number from 500,000 to $1 million. That would be used for boat ramps, one of them being for the Bassmaster Classic, another one in West Tennessee.
All right, so we have a motion to amend the expansion to the 2018-19 voting amendment for adding $500,000, correct? Second?
Second.
Any discussions? Comments from the public? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so we now have a first and a second for the expansion, which will now be, if my math is right, $1,150,000 to the 2018-2019 boating budget. Any discussions? Do I have to have a motion for the new number? Do? Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Public? All right, so we have a first and a second for the expansion of $1,150,000. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, we have, I need a motion to approve the 2019-20 wildlife budget in the amount of $80,840,800 as presented in your books.
We're still in committee.
We are still in committee. We have a motion. We have a second. Have a second. Any discussions among the committee? Any discussions from the public? All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Come on. There's not many of you got to work with me. All right, the ayes have it. And finally, last committee action is to approve the 2019-2020 boating budget in the amount of $12,879,200 as presented. I'll take a motion. You've done them all. You might as well do this one too. Second. All in favor? Are any discussions? Anything from the public? No. All in favor say aye. Opposed? All right. With that, Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee concludes our business.
Thank you, Chairman Sanders. So now we'll go into the full commission budget committee meeting. So, Chairman Sanders?
We're good, right? Because I can mess up, so I just want to make sure. Good. All right. We actually have the same things to do now. Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee recommends the expansion of the 2018-2019 wildlife budget in the amount of $12,135,300.
Thank you, Chairman Sanders. So we have a motion. I'll take that in the form of a motion that for expansion of the budget 2018-19 for the $12,135,300. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion amongst the commission?
Just for clarification, what you expanding the budget $12 million? Is that what you said?
Yes, $12,135,000.
Oh, these are for the requested expansions. They're already in the budget, aren't they not? I mean, in this.
They're in the book.
Okay, so we have to. Okay.
Any other questions from the commission? Questions from the public?
Are these expansions? This is the appropriate time to make amendments.
Yes.
Okay. Time out. Just
On the expansions.
On the expansions, or questions. I'm not sure who this is a question.
And this is wildlife, Commissioner Cox, the wildlife expansion.
Right.
Okay.
And this may be just a statement, but we've got an elk expansion for $316,600 for research to basically figure out what elk eat. You know, it's a little frustrating to me that, and I don't know that this is whether we will wait or not, but we've got an elk habitat, an elk coordinator that is a smart guy and seems like to me should know what elk eat and shouldn't have to have a study. And and of course I don't mind them studying elk, that's fine, it's federal money and it's, you know, not come out of licensed dollars. But are we going to, somebody can answer this, are we going to wait until we start on habitat on the mountain up there, but till we get this study back and however long it takes to get it done? Does anybody know that? Or we've developed an elk plan and up to now haven't had a habitat plan, but now we've got an elk coordinator that's done a year-long habitat, an elk plan, and now we're going to study what they eat. It's just seems to me that there's very little getting done for the elk habitat up there, and now we're going to study it again. So are you, we've talked about this, so maybe you want to talk to me again about it.
Now, I'll defer to Mark for any additional information. There are habitat work going on now on the North Cumberland. There's a hope to expand the habitat more, depending on where it would be appropriate. So much of the terrain on the North Cumberland is not real it's difficult to put a lot of habitat openings on some of the terrain up there because it's so steep and the soil is left over from a lot of mining and those kinds, so it's not really good in a lot of places. But there are habitat studies that have been done. I know that in this budget, there's an extra position for the elk program that's part of the wildlife stuff. The elk, Brad Miller has relied on the staff of the North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area to help him in everything that he does, and they've been very good about doing that. There is a technician included in this budget to work directly under Brad to help do a lot of those things, that from the depredation problems that he has and problem elk to actually going out and helping doing some of the mapping for the habitat improvement. But Mark, is that close, or you want to add anything to that, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Mark Goodland, Assistant Chief, Wildlife and Forestry. Yes, we have a plan in place to increase the elk habitat and openings if I remember right, about 400 acres over the next 5 years. That was just as is. For now, looking for other opportunities where we can expand the elk habitat. And the study, just to clarify on the research, is not on what they eat. There are 6 objectives in the research. It's population density estimate from DNA, from scats, and monitoring elk movements and survival, determining their pregnancy rates, the effects of the meningeal worm, evaluating and comparing the genetic health of the herd with original stocking sources, and also predicting the population growth rate. And a lot of these hopefully should address some of the many questions that the commission has had over the last several years on elk. So it's a combination. We're not ignoring the habitat. There's 2 different things going on, and as research tends to do, it helps give us some idea on what's going on. Again, addressing the different nuisance issues. Some of the GPS elk we have already shown that they're staying in the same area. Of course, the questions on how much do they move during the winter time? Is there like migration or any kind of pattern in the movements? So we feel like this research will help us manage elk better into the future, and we continue to work where we can on expanding the habitat there.
Thank you. I just want to confirm that and all that sounds like it'd be good data to know, but at the same time, I'm hoping that progress is being made on opening up benches and clear cuts and whatever's up there. Egg grazers, if you don't know what to plant, call Kentucky, because they're obviously ahead of us because they've got better habitat. But I just didn't think we needed to wait to do that while we're studying something. So thank you for that explanation. Let's see. Mr. Chairman, I've got an amendment. We've got under 7316 on page 6, at the top of the page, fish habitat for the enhancement of reservoirs that Chief Fiss, and we had a very good presentation this morning for $150,000 for our reservoirs.
Commissioner Cox?
Yes.
That's under boating, is it not?
It says wildlife.
Then it's under wildlife. Sorry about that.
I'll wait if that's.
Oh, nope.
Okay.
Thanks, sorry about that.
I would like to amend that 150 to 200,000 with the intent of that other 50 going to our agency lakes to begin work on what they need, whether it's courtesy docks, water control structures, habitat enhancement, structure in the bottoms, whatever it needs to be. Please, sir. I put that in the form of motion. I'd appreciate a second. It's on page 6 at the top. 7316, fish habitat.
So, I'm sorry, Bill, I was trying to figure out what committee it's, what it's under. So you're saying 50,000 more, make it 200,000 to include
With the
community
intention
lakes.
of the other 50 going to start work on our agency lakes.
Okay, and we know this is in wildlife. I'm all for it. I just want to make sure we're in the
I-
right
I'm
spot. So,
It's under, it says under wildlife, so I'm happy to wait, whatever you want.
There's two 150s. There's one under wildlife and there's one under boating.
This,
let-
just for clarification, this gets a little complicated, but that is a wildlife project, but the money comes from the boating fund. It's funded by the marine fuel tax, so in order to get it into wildlife, we have to show an expenditure in boating of $150,000 and move it to wildlife. So it would be the same. If you increase it, we'll have to take that out of, we'll add it to the boating budget and then also add it to the wildlife budget.
right now, I just want to make sure we're doing it appropriately so it counts. Or can we move forward? We're in the right committee to do this now?
Yes, sir. This is my estimation. You can go forward and make that change with just knowing that we'll make the technical corrections, just so that you know where the money's coming from.
Great, thank you. All right, we have a
Just need
motion.
one amendment, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second to amend to add $50,000 to the wildlife habitat for a total of $200,000. Any discussion from the commission? Any discussion from the public? All in
Is this,
favor?
this coming from fuel tax dollars?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Can we use wetland money, Director Carter, for that extra 50,000?
Yes, sir.
Is there a
Does that need to
reason?
be part of the motion, or is that your discretion?
If it would be okay with y'all, when we go back and figure out the rest of these, we'll look at those balances and take it from the most appropriate fund.
And, yeah, I would ask that question because isn't the wetlands funds, anytime we can take it from that, we should be trying to do so because it's hard to get funds out of that, right? I mean,
It has to be for projects that we actually own, and of course, we don't own the reservoirs, so we can't use wetlands money to do the reservoir projects, but on those areas that we actually own, like state lakes that are under TWRA, we could use it.
So some of this money, some of this 200 could be wetlands and some could be funded as we,
We could take 50,000 to fund the Commissioner Cox's amendment.
right? So any discussion, with that clarification, any discussion from the commission? Any discussion from the public? So all in favor for the amendment to expand the fish habitat from $150,000 to $200,000, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposed? So the amendment passes. So Chairman Sanders? Are we? No. So we're back. Okay, as amended. So now, any discussion on?
Yeah, I'm not finished.
Okay. Please
If I may.
proceed.
One comment, the big game harvest, 7822, we're getting $98,000 of federal money to fund a university study to estimate harvest and hunter effort. It seems to me that if we would pursue some sort of tagging system that would help us keep that data. So we haven't talked about that in a while, but I would suggest that that be a subject in the future that that we address again. And I've got one more amendment, Mr. Chairman. Well, I tell you what, I'm not going to make that amendment. I'll just hush. I'm through. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. Any other discussion on the expansion budget? From the commission. Any other discussion from the public on the expansion budget for wildlife? So now we'll be voting on the expansion of wildlife 2018-19 budget to $12,135,300. This is a commission vote. All in favor, say aye. It is higher. So that would be,
I know we added 50, was there anything else we added?
no,
So it'd be
so
12,185,300.
635? You had 500, you added 50 to it, I mean? Oh, 185, 50, okay. So, this is for expansion of wildlife, year 2018-19, $12,185,300. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? That passes. Chairman Sanders?
I have one clarification for somebody. Since we have to we're using more money, we're taking out of boating into wildlife for this, do we need to adjust our, what I'm getting ready to say, does that need to be adjusted for what we just did? Because it's coming out of one going into the other.
I think the direction we got was to take it out of wetlands, Commissioner Sanders, so we
Okay.
won't have to make that amendment.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee met and make a motion for passage of the 2018-2019 boating budget expansion of $1,150,000.
Thank you, Chairman Sanders. I'll take that as a form of a motion. Do I have a second? Any discussion from the commission? Any discussion from the public? So hearing none, we have the motion approval for approval of the boating expansion budget for 2018-19 of $1,150,000. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. That passes. Commissioner Sanders?
Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee met and make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 wildlife budget as presented of $80,840,800.
Take that in the form, thank you, Chairman Sanders. I'll take that in the form of a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion from the commission? Any discussion from the public? So we're voting for approval of the wildlife budget for 2019 and 20 for a total of $80,840,000. Is it 800? Okay. $80,840,800. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So that passes. Chairman Sanders?
Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee met and make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 boating budget in the amount of $12,879,200.
Say that again, please.
$12,879,200.
And this is as amended? Is this the amended?
There's no amendment to this one.
So one was,
The expansions were amended, the budgets were not.
we're okay that we didn't say as amended. Okay. So I'll take that in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
Are we on 1920 or still on 1819?
Any discussion from the commission? Any discussion from the public? So all in favor of the boating budget for 2019-20 in the amount of $12,879,200, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes.
Mr. Chairman, that's it for the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Chairman Sanders, and that completes the budget.
Could I ask a question of staff, whoever can maybe here? I'd like to know what the balance is in the reserves before and after each one of these budgets. What's the balance sheet say we've got in reserves?
All I can do is speak in generalities. Approximately 34 million in wildlife before these, and in boating, bear with me. Now, I'm running through this year, approximately 4.6 million.
And then after the budget?
Well, that would be including the budgets.
Okay,
That
well,
were-
Director
that were
Carter
approved.
said we are adding more to the reserves than we're taking out. So I haven't seen the totals on that, so I'd just like to know what the total was before we started and after we got finished.
All right, then before we started, we would have in boating 5,000,003, and now we would have about 4,000,006.
Okay,
In wildlife, before we started, we would have about 34,6, and about the same ending up.
Does that say balanced? Is that what that means on wildlife? Sounds like it to me. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Cox. So now I'd like to recognize Chairman Box for the Voting and Law Enforcement Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Box. We had an esteemed colleague show up here, sneak in the back door, the former Commissioner, Mr. Boyce Magley. I don't know if he's come here picking on me or what.
I thought you'd be in the woods this morning.
Okay, yesterday the Voting and Law Enforcement Committee was presented with the request to approve Proclamation 1814, which involves a temporary suspension of the no-wake zone on Nickajack Reservoir. And this request will be for the dates of October 12, 13, 14, 12, 13, and 14, 2018, and from the times on each day from 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., that the day of the race, and it's for the participants and the officials for the Outboard Drag Boat Race Association. And again, this has been an annual request for the last 10 years that this commission has granted. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from commission, committee, public? Mr. Chairman, the voting committee met yesterday and met to approve Proclamation 1814.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I take that in the form of a motion. Do I have a second? Any discussion from the commission? Any discussion from the public? Hearing none, we'll be voting now on Proclamation 1814 as described. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Proclamation 1814 passes. Thank you. You have another one? Yeah.
Chairman Box, I think this is going to be a rulemaking hearing on this one.
Don't we have a what are we doing, the
Is that
preview? Or are we doing a
preview,
hearing?
right?
It's whatever you want, but
Whatever you're ready for.
Let's do the rulemaking hearing. That way, all the actions will be done, and we'll do the preview where there'll be no action, just so I can wrap my hands around it.
Okay,
We don't confuse everybody.
that sounds good.
So we're going into the rule-making hearing. So this is a rule-making hearing before the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission to consider amending Rule 1660-02-07, which deals with rules and regulations governing operations of vessels. My name is Jeff Cook, and I will conduct the hearing. The order of the proceedings. Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency staff will present information on the proposed rule amendment. Commission members will be permitted to comment and ask questions. Members of the audience will be permitted to comment and ask questions. Staff members and members of the audience wishing to speak should identify themselves before speaking. I reserve the right to limit comments and discussion, especially in case of repetition. So, Colonel Ryder.
Thank you, Commissioner. This rule, there's two amendments underneath the one rule, which the one rule is 1660-2-07, which is the rules and regulations for governing operation of vessels. And there's going to be one amendment under 1660-02-07.04, which involves Old Hickory Lake. And the second amendment is going to be underneath 1660-2-07.11, which is special areas. So the first one for the Old Hickory area, this amendment will remove paragraph 21, which states vessels are prohibited from entering the discharge channel at the TVA fossil plant near the Cumberland River mile mark 243, as marked by informational buoys and a barrier float. So the history behind here, roughly in about 2013, the commission passed an emergency rule for a construction project there at the plant, and then that emergency rule turned into the permanent rule here back in like 2014. That project is complete, and therefore we've got some requests from fishermen to lift that barrier so they can get in there and fish. And I'll try to do this, man, and I shouldn't, but I will. Oh, look at that. Oh, they ain't seen this, Scotty. Drag it over. See, I told you I shouldn't have done this. There we go. So if y'all can see that, this was the construction site up here, and that's the barrier that we'll remove. And we have consulted with TVA, and they're fine with pulling that barrier. And that'll allow the fishermen to get up in there. So I'll move on to the second amendment, which is underneath special areas. Where'd it go, Scotty? Oh, well. You got me, Scotty? This is be 1660-2-07.11, which is special areas. And this section is going to be amended by a new paragraph, which will be number 8. And that simply states vessels are prohibited from the Highway 21 bridge south to the new Reelfoot Lake spillway. This was a request through Manager Jeff Martin to keep boats from being prohibited to be in this area with the new spillway construction. And dare I do this again? And this will be the Reelfoot spillway. Drag it, right? So that this area here will be the boats keep out, prohibited, at the request of the late Manager Jeff Martin. And I'll be glad to answer any questions on those 2 proposed amendments.
Those are the only 2. We have one more as well.
No, sir, not under this rule. Yes, sir.
So need a motion approval for rules 1660-02-07-04 and 1660-02-07-11. Do I have a motion for approval? In a second? Second. Any discussion on the commission?
I'd like to know why Jeff doesn't want boats in there.
I think there, of course, somebody can certainly tell me different, but the boat's at risk of getting, go ahead, Ed.
This spillway operates differently than the others. When they're discharging water, the gates lift up from the bottom, and there's a safety hazard if boats are close to that area while the spillways are actually operational. You can still fish from the bank, and they have some areas on both sides that they're constructing for bank fishing.
It's permanent. It'll be permanent boats keep out right here. You know,
Any other discussion from Commissioner Cox? Box?
Cook.
Sorry.
It happens a lot, it's fine. While you're here, would you mind giving us an update on the spillway on, briefly, just a little?
The very brief
Very
update
brief.
is that the old spillway was closed off Wednesday. We began using the new spillway yesterday. So it's now operational.
Thank you so much, I appreciate that.
Any other discussion of the rule? Any discussion from the public? Hearing none, all in favor for adopting Rule 1660-02-07-04 and 1660-02-07-11, let me know by saying aye. Any opposed? None, the rule passes. Colonel Ryder?
yes, sir.
Commissioner Stroud?
Oh,
Ed, when they, and I'll be quick, when they close that off, is it now where the spillway is, the old spillway, there's the road, is it blocked off under the road, or does it go?
It's blocked off it's blocked off on the water side, on the
water.
lake side.
Yeah.
And it's got big sheet piling that goes around it, and the TDOT is now going to begin the process of working on the bridge.
So there's the bridge with the highway, and then it's on the water side?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And so as they work on the bridge, they're going to take the spillway out or pour it full of concrete, or what are they going, how are they going to close
I'm
it?
really not sure they're not planning on taking the old spillway out. They're just going to, as far as I know, they're just gonna go in and enhance the old structure that's been there for so long. It's just kind of just updating that.
Colonel Ryder?
Yes, Commissioner, if I can, these next few slides will kind of create a new rule that we're proposing to be approved. And this will be, if it gets approved, it'll be 1660-1-33, which will be the rules and regulation governing the tracking of wounded deer. This preview is for the proposed rule, and it's being proposed as a result of the need to provide the provisions that hunters be allowed to track wounded deer with the aid of a dog. This comes as a result of having an internal policy since 1990 that we use to address these requests for the use of dog to track wounded deer. But basically, the agency was allowing this tracking effort in conflict with our TCA code that does not allow the use of dogs to hunt deer. So now, and I'll certainly lean on Chris Richardson to provide any comments that he may, but this past legislation, they have given the ability to the commission and authority to create a rule that will set the provisions and guidelines for these hunters to track wounded deer with their dog.
Thank you, Colonel Ryder. So to get this before us, I need to have a motion to...
No, sir, not now. If I could, I hate to interrupt you, but I just want to preview the provisions that are set forth in this drafted rule that we have drafted.
Guess I was getting hungry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. The deer season must be legally open. The dog must be maintained on a leash at all times. All weapons legal for hunting for that season are allowed while tracking with the dog. There are no weapons permitted after the shooting hours. If the hunter chooses to use the service of the handler, then that hunter will accompany the handler at all times. The handler may only use one dog, which must be leashed at all times, and the handler is not required to possess a hunting license when providing this service to the hunter. If the season requires hunters to wear daylight fluorescent orange, then we're asking that the accompanied handler should wear the orange also. If the deer travels off the property where it was illegally shot, it's incumbent upon the hunter to obtain permission from all and any landowners to cross their property and or to retrieve their deer. And the hunter, before starting the track, is to notify the appropriate regional office and kind of give us their location, including the county and the physical address. And then we're requesting that all tracking efforts using the dog shall terminate at midnight local time. So that's kind of what we have drafted up for your preview.
Is it my turn now? Okay. Thanks.
Yes, sir, you may.
Thank you. So I need a motion for approval of rule.
No, sir. Oh, this has.
I mean, I'm sorry. Don't we have to have a motion and a second to discuss it, or no?
This is just information, like the one Chris presented yesterday.
Okay.
This is for y'all to look at and understand that this is the path that we're headed down and the direction that we want to go. And if y'all have the ability now to have input here, comments, concerns, and have that input, I think that's where y'all are at.
Commissioner Woods.
Out in Texas, I've had to get a dog several times. I think I like everything you got. I mean, I'm thinking if nobody opposes, I'm ready to put it in motion. No, can't do it yet?
Well, if, again, Tracy will join in. If I get your blessing right now, if we get your blessing right now, it's my understanding our goal would to be to file this rule by September 4th. And if that tracks just right, all the stars and moons line up, then I think we can come before you in October for your approval of the rule in its final form. As long as there's no amendments or public hearing between that time.
Commissioner McLaren.
I think I had one question. Something was mentioned about the dog staying on a leash.
Yes.
How do you handle, I see some dogs in parks that are on a leash, but nobody's a hold of the leash. Do you need to specify anything about handler needs to be maintain control of the dog at all times, or, I mean, does it need any other language about that?
I think we can go back and see if this clears that up, but if we need a minute to make it more clear, we can certainly do that. But that's kind of the language I think I know we queried about 8 other states that allow this, and that's kind of the language they use, but we'll certainly look at that before you see it, let's say October. And if there's that amendment needed, we'll certainly bring it forward if that's not clear enough language.
Commissioner Cox?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this, but I have a question, and I've been involved in deer dog, blood dogs before, but I'm wondering how effective a dog is gonna be on a leash. I mean, the labs that I've been involved with, they put the dog on where the last deer was seen, and the dog runs off and in many cases finds a deer that's not dead and holds it, or finds it and sits on it. But I'm not, and I understand why you think you need to. I guess I understand. Maybe I don't. If you're calling the agency office and letting them know you're going to be there, why do you want it on a leash? What's the problem with letting the lab off the leash to go find the deer and bark? I mean, I guess you're trying to keep them from dog and deer, but that's not. If they're calling they didn't call the agency office, then they're illegal anyway. And if they have, I don't know what difference it makes.
I think that's the standard used by these other states, the language there, that dog must be on a leash at all times for that simple fact of control. And man, maybe you got a lot better dogs than a lot of people, but if that dog gets off track and goes after that deer, there's no telling where to end up.
I'm not, well, the deer in Texas the dogs in Texas on a leash.
I'd hate to try to hang on to it.
You know, I've got heartburn about that. I don't know how effective you're gonna be with the dog on a leash, tracking, and I'm gonna do a little research and make some phone calls, but I don't think I support this because I don't hate to waste a deer, but I'm not sure it's gonna be effective, dog on a 10-foot leash out there trying to dog a deer or blood trail a deer. So that's my only problem with it.
Don't they use a leash when they're tracking humans, like escaped convicts and things like that? Typically, you see them on a leash.
It's more of a harness operation.
Yeah, but I mean, the dog is controlled.
They're not trailing humans. They're trailing a deer that can get up and run off, and the dog can catch the deer and hold it. So, that's my only heartburn about it.
Commissioner Holbert?
Darren, just to go on the leash, I think, and I understand the concern totally, but I also understand that you don't have the right to go on somebody else's property without their permission. So if that dog's not on a leash, that dog's going to go wherever the deer is. I have a deer dog, leash trained, but anyway, most of these leashes are 50 feet long. They have a harness on them. Most all the trackers in West Tennessee that have been doing this without permission, without against the law, all are on leashes. Most all your northern states, Kentucky up, definitely require you to be on the leash. So I don't think I agree. Texas, I don't know. I think bigger tracts of land is fine, but I think you've got to keep it where that the dog just can't go on the neighbor's property. If you do, your deer dog is going to get shot. So I think we got to be very careful. I just think the obtaining permission from the landowners is important. And if that dog's not on a leash, then that won't happen. You won't be able to control where it goes.
Any comments from the commission? Any comments from the public? So I'd say yes. It sounds as though we're approving to proceed and to evaluate
We'll
this.
move forward and hopefully have it presented to y'all in October.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Is that it? Right. Thank you, Chairman Box. I got it right. Thank you. So that concludes our agenda. Is there any other discussion from the commission? Just about, yeah. Any other discussion? Okay.
I was just going to say, Commissioner Box, that I've been scrolling through Facebook on the break, and there's a lot of people out there enjoying the deer hunt today. So there's a lot of pretty deer that have been photographed and put up on Facebook today. So.
Great.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. One more announcement. There's another birthday that I failed to mention, and it's actually a real birthday.
What do you mean? It's a real
Mr.
birthday.
Kurt Holbert's birthday is August 29th. Laney told me. So everybody needs to wish him a happy birthday. I don't have him a Mr. Crappie hat, but
Yeah.
I'll have to bring you one next month. So.
That would be nice, because I noticed on the online video yesterday, there was something shining over my head. I could not figure out what that was. Anyway.
Director Carter?
Mr. Chairman, just a reminder, next meeting's in Knoxville at the Cedar Bluff Holiday Inn on the 20th and 21st. And we'll be touring the North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area as a part of that meeting. Also remind you that tomorrow is free hunting day. Just a lot of people that maybe haven't hunted, this will be a chance for them to go do that.
Thank you, Director Carter. Any other comments from the commission?
I've got one more. I'd like to thank Director Carter and staff, and it's been a tough budget process, and if I'd had my way, we wouldn't have approved it this month, but I thank you for your hard work and what you've done, and we've discussed it, and the problems you've had, and the tolerance you've had for me asking and pushing you and prodding you with my questions, and I appreciate it. Y'all just, it's a good day for me to see that you started with 34 million and you ended with 34 million in wildlife. I think that's good, and Chris Richardson, good job, and whoever else, and I think it's good. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox, and I agree. And as I said yesterday, this is the one thing that the entire agency is involved in. So thank you for everybody's help. And Susie and Dale, I think we'd all love to know Monday what the final license count and the harvest count was. If y'all don't mind, just send us an email. That'd be really nice to know. So, and again, I commend Commissioner Box for pushing this. Great idea. I'd like to thank Faye for all the goodies. She takes good care of us, so appreciate that, and appreciate all the staff does. And is there any other comments?
I do want to thank Susie for all her hard work. She's been awesome.
She has. Yep. You ask
Better
her a
be
question.
texting me all weekend too. I know
Ask
you're
a
off
question.
work, but
You ask a question, you get an immediate answer, and it's accurate. So, and Connie, again, happy birthday, Kurt. So,
and go Vols.
We'll see y'all in September. We're adjourned.